Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's get started with Week 57's Word Nerd Wednesday. Fun series, right? We've ranged all over. We've talked about Irene on Gil-galad, Fingon, Manwë Sulimo, Gildor and Glorian, Varda, the regions of the island of Numenor, my favorite word, Ostler and White, the names of Aragorn, and even Beren, son of Barahir. Give him a hand, everybody. Even I think that was terrible. Today we are going to take a look at actually four place names that come up in tomorrow's Third Age Thursday reading. Last week we read the song of Beren and Lúthien that Aragorn chanted to the hobbits in the dell on Weathertop. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the structure of the poem, as well as review the prose explanation of the story that Aragorn provides after. And in that prose explanation, Aragorn mentions some places. In those days, the great enemy, of whom Sauron of Mordor was but a servant, dwelt in Angband in the north, and the elves of the west, coming back to Middle-earth, made war upon him to regain the Silmarils which he had stolen, and the fathers of men aided the elves. But the enemy was victorious, and Barahir was slain, and Beren, escaping through great peril, came over the mountains of terror into the hidden kingdom of Thingol, in the forest of Neldoreth. There he beheld Lúthien singing and dancing in a glade beside the enchanted river Escalduin, and he named her Tinuviel, that is, nightingale in the language of old. Your word nerdery is very important to us. Your place names will be discussed in the order in which they were read. First up is Angband, the home of Morgoth, the great enemy of whom Aragorn speaks. The name is Sindarin, and it means iron prison or hell of iron. The element Ang means iron, not Aang the Last Airbender. And we see it in a lot of other names, right? The Witch King's realm of Angmar, Iron Home. The knife that Beren used to pry the Silmaril from Morgoth's crown, Angrist, Iron Cleaver. And Turin's talking sword, Gurthang, Iron of Death. I almost call it the Iron of Talkative Death, but that would be lying. The second element, Band, means prison or hell. Now, we don't really see that element anywhere else, but it is from the same root that we see in the name of Mandos. Mando meaning custody, so you can certainly see that connection with prison. That's why Angband's name in Quenya is Angamando, Iron Jail. Now, the next name to talk about is actually some word nerdery in reverse. Aragorn mentions Beren coming over the Mountains of Terror. It would have been nice if he'd said that Beren had come over the Ered Gorgoroth, because then I could have told you that that was Sindarin for the Mountains of Terror. Instead, I'll just break down Ered Gorgoroth, since that is the Sindarin name for this terrifying range of peaks. Ered, I think you know by now, is the Sindarin word for mountains. Ered Luin, Blue Mountains. Ered Wethrin, Mountains of Shadow, and so on. It's the plural form of the singular Orad, which we see in Oradruin, Mount Doom, for example. The Gorgor element is Sindarin for terror, haunting fear, or even extreme horror. We also see this in the name of the ravine that was the main entrance to Mordor, Cirith Gorgor, the Haunted Pass, as well as another place in Mordor, the Plateau of Gorgoroth, Valley of Terror or Land of Deadly Fear. Thus, Ered Gorgoroth is the Mountains of Terror or the Mountains of Deadly Fear. Next up, Aragorn says that Thingol's kingdom is in the Forest of Neldoreth. Now, the final element, eth, is just an abstract noun ending. We see it all the time. Cirith Gorgor, for example, that we just talked about, or Henneth Anun, Merith Aderthad. But it's the first element that's interesting here, Neldor. It's Sindarin for beach, and we also see it in Treebeard's chant to the hobbits about his time in Beleriand. To the beaches of Neldoreth I came in the autumn. Ah, the gold and the red and the sighing of leaves in the autumn in Taurna Neldor. Now, Taurna Neldor is simply forest of beech or beech forest, and Treebeard here is using Taurna Neldor and Neldoreth synonymously. So Neldoreth is a beech forest, even if it's just beech with an abstract noun ending. Now, what's more interesting about the element Neldor is that in the etymologies of the 1930s, Tolkien originally had this as a word based on a primitive Elvish root, Neled, 3, which Tolkien said was the proper name of Hiralorn, the great beech of Thingol with 3 trunks, Neldorn. Now, later it just became beech, but I really like that connection with Hiralorn and thought that was worth mentioning. Finally, we have Escalduin. In Parma Eldalamberon 17, it's translated as river under shade, where in the etymologies it's translated as river under veil. It's a combination of the elements Esgal, meaning shadow or screen, and the far more familiar Duin, meaning river. We see that in Anduin, Great River, Branduin, Brown River or Brandywine, and Kelduin, the running river. But the Esgal element is unique, and it has its roots in the Ilkurin language. That's a tongue written by Tolkien in the very earliest versions of the Legendarium as the tongue of the Ilkurindi, the elves that we would now know as the Avari, Nandor, and Sinyar. That is to say, the Umanyar, the ones who never saw the light of the trees. Now, eventually, Ilkurin would be replaced by a combination of Sindarin and Avarin. So in the 1930s etymologies, Esgal was translated screen, hiding, roof of leaves, but in Ilkurin. Later, Tolkien shifted the sense of the root skal to apply to opaque things that cut off light and cast shadows, and developed a new root, span, that would correspond to veil. So that's why it's no longer veil. So that's it for Angband, Ered Gorgoroth, Neldoreth, and Esgalduin. And that's also it for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. Come back next week as we wander the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, please let me know by emailing barlaman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and more. And join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Follow or subscribe in your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.